What is up, my snow friends? It's the Snowbard, and I'm doing something different today. I'm doing a guide. Finally. Well, not really finally, it's just that after playing Jinbe for quite a while, I wanted to do some sort of guide based on my experiences with playing him, and maybe go through a little bit of the history of what the deck has done. And I'm just gonna jump right into it because so we're just gonna talk about Jinbe, my favorite character in One Piece, and the leader that I just play a lot to this day. So just an overview of what he does. He's a 5,000 power 5 life leader, and when you activate main, you may trash a card from your hand to give up to 2 Rested Dawn cards to one of your Fishman or Merfolk type leader or character cards. So this is not limited to once a turn, so as long as you have enough cards and enough Dawn in your hand, you can basically pump up your creatures as much as you can. This is a very aggressive tempo-based leader, and I say tempo quite loosely here because you're an aggressive leader, you want to be controlling the flow of the game and to make sure that you get to kill your opponent before they get to stabilize and turn the tides in their favor. So for me, Jinbe is deceptively difficult to play. I mean, if you're someone new playing One Piece, I would not recommend playing this. But this is a guide on how to actually improve on playing this leader, or at least how to know how to play this leader. So do not let the hidden difficulty of the leader discourage you from playing this. Like, just spoiler alert, he's just a really fun leader to play. We're just gonna go over the core cards that I've seen. Since he came out, like there's been like a consistent like package of cards, and we're gonna go through all of them. Yes, so we're gonna start with the 1-drop Arlong, 3,000 power. On play, if your leader has the Fishman type, look at 4 cards from the top of your deck, reveal up to 1 card with a cost of 2 or more and add it to your hand, then place the rest at the bottom of your deck in any order. He doesn't have a counter, but he searches for basically anything in your deck that is on a 1-drop. And you're gonna see a lot of those like as we progress through the guide. What's nice about Arlong specifically is that not only does he search, but he's versatile in a way where he can be aggressive early, and then you can actually bounce him to your hand based on certain cards. Same thing with Chu, same stat line, but on play, if your leader has the Fishman type, draw a card. So he basically replaces himself. And what's also good about Chu is that not only is he like Arlong, where he can be aggressive and can be bounced to hand, in any case that you don't really need him, you can trash him to your leader's effect, which honestly, he's not gonna be the most useful thing to play late unless you're really digging for cards. I've had like a situation before against Imu where I had to basically play 2 Chus, bounce both of them with law just to find Femur, and then I managed to do so, and then I just was able to kill my opponent. But that's a very specific situation. Then another core card is basically our boss monster, Jinbe. 8 costs 10,000 power. When a card is trashed from your hand by an effect, this character gains rush until end of turn. On play, you may rest 2 of your Dawn cards, draw 2 cards, and return up to 1 character with a cost of 7 or less to the owner's hand. You can return your own stuff, you can return your opponent's stuff. So this is the boss monster of the deck, and it's a 3-card tempo swing if you manage to rest 2 cards, up to 3 cards if you decide not to bounce anything to hand, and he's basically your main finisher. What's technical about this Jinbe specifically is that you can, as I kind of like passed over, you can bounce your own stuff with it. maybe you don't have enough cards to kind of like finish the game, so you're kind of forced to bounce your own cards to hand and then use it to leader effects fodder, as a leader effect fodder, like for example Chu. But other than that, like 8 cost 10,000 power rush is very good. And last but not least on the core cards, if I remember correctly, is Perfume Femur. It's a 2 cost event main. Select up to one of your 7 Warlords of the Sea type leader or character cards, which Jinbe is if we went back to him. He's a Fishman, he's a 7 Warlords, and he's a Sun Pirates, which is not relevant. But going back to the event, yeah. So one of your 7 Warlords leader or character cards, which your boss Jinbe is, or your boss or your leader is, and that card gains plus 2,000 power during this turn. Then if the selected card attacks during this turn, your opponent cannot activate blocker. So this is in tandem with Jinbe. This is a way to get through new gates. This is a way to get through like mini blockers. This is a way to get through Imu's blockers as well. And if you were to trigger it on your life, it replaces itself. Ideally, in certain matchups, you need to keep this until the very end, unless you have way too much. You would like to keep at least 1 or 2, or at least get to 1 or 2 of them in your hand by the time you're trying to finish the game. As you can see, the core cards, these don't have a lot of counters. There's one that is, and it's Koala. So 2 cost, 0 power, 2,000 counter. Activate main, you may trash this character. Up to one of your Fishman or Merfolk type leader or character cards gains plus 2,000 power during this turn. Early game, she's defense. She's a core counter card in a way that she's been there since the very beginning. I think nowadays most people would prefer to play like other 2K counters, but personally I would still keep like 2 copies, although before like you would play 4, because she is very good late game. For example, you have a boss Jinbe on the field. You can play Koala, sacrifice it, or you can trash it to give plus 2,000 to your Jinbe. You can trash another card to your hand to give 2 Residon to your boss Jinbe, so now there's like 14k, and then you can play Femur. Which means for a 1 card, so for a Koala and one card, you're kind of investing like 4,000 power on a boss monster, or at least your leader, which can help with the late game. And most lists, I think nowadays, especially with like the more relevant packages, don't play a lot of Koala. I already said that, but she's still pretty good. Yeah, most of the cards here can be played like this. This is not usually noted, but these are like, you play 4 copies of Arlong, you play 4 copies of Chu, you play 4 copies of Jinbe, definitely. Perfume Femur used to be a 4 of. Now I see most lists play 2, but it really depends on the playstyle of the person. But as I said, these 5 are usually core cards that have existed since the leader's release. And yeah, so we're gonna now we're gonna discuss the Fishman Merfolk package that was prevalent in the initial release of the leader. So we're going through a little bit of history here, and these were the cards that I was able to use when I actually won my first locals and actually kickstarted my YouTube career. Well, career. But yeah, we're gonna see them one by one. I actually didn't think to remove Chu, but yeah, this is fine. Like it doesn't really matter. We're just gonna reiterate that these, like, Chu was one of the cards that was used beforehand. And then we have Hachan. Same stat line, 1 cost 3,000 power, but instead of drawing a card when he enters, you have to attach 2 Dawn to him, and he will draw a card when he dies. So this is the reverse of Chu, and because you need to, of course, like discard a card to pump Hachan and then hopefully get that investment back because you replace stuff on KO. But if you have him starting from 4 Dawn, do not play him because you have other things to play, as you will see eventually. You just have to discard it to Leader's effect. That's what you actually do. Now, a point of contention actually are the next 2 cards. If you have the last card, which is Arlong, you play that instead of this, but this is your budget option. So we'll start with the budget option, which is Kurobi. 3 cost, 3000 power, 1k counter. When a card is trashed from your hand by an effect, this character gains rush during this turn, and on KO, draw a card. So this is a mini Jinbe, not as powerful, but it replaces itself when it dies. And you can play it with other cards if you're trying to swarm the board. But if you had at the time, if you had more money, or if you had the resources to get it, you get the Arlong, which is 3 cost, 4000 power character, which is a Fishman as well, with a 1k counter. And if you have a Dawn attached to it, when attacking, if you have 4 or more life cards, your opponent places 1 card from their hand at the bottom of their deck. So this was the card that I used, one of the cards that I used basically to win me the locals. And I'm kind of sniping like 3, 4, like if you're at 4 or 5 life, if you manage to keep your life healthy, you're removing a lot of cards from your opponent's hand. And the only way to get rid of him is to basically kill him or just remove him from the board. I mean, surely. Or you disable his effect by making the Jinbe player go to 3 life, but it doesn't, like, but by then, Arlong has already done his job, most likely. So these cards specifically, and the initial and the Arlong Searcher, can be played with the following 2 cards. Well, we'll focus on the 2 cards in the middle, which is Aladdin and Shirahoshi. So both of them are 4 costs, both of them are a 1k counter, but Aladdin is 5k power and Shirahoshi is a 0 power blocker. But both of them allow you to play a Fishman or Merfolk that costs 3 or less from your hand. Except with Shirahoshi, you draw a card while you're doing so, and Aladdin does it when he dies. But this is a combo that you would do with these and Wadatsumi. 3 cost 5000 power, 2k counter Fishman. This character cannot attack, but when a character is trashed from your hand by an effect, this character's effect is negated during this turn. So you can see from like how aggressive the deck is quite early, because you would essentially play these first, and then, especially if you're going second, and then you play Aladdin or Shirahoshi, and then you play Wadatsumi, Kurobi, or Arlong, depending on your deck list. And then next turn you basically trash card to make sure Wadatsumi can attack for 5 or 7. But the core card, I think, which is why the Fishman deck worked as it did before, was Fisher Tiger. 6 cost 7000 power Fishman with a 1k counter. On play, if your leader has the Fishman type, which Jinbe is, you draw 3 cards. And at the end of your turn, trash cards from your hand until you have 5 cards in your hand. This was one of your mid-game bosses, and the end of turn effect is quite negligent, especially if you've been managing your hand quite well. You can eventually like draw 8, so you get to 8 cards and then you draw back down to, I would say, you discard back down to 5 and you're swinging big. The downside of Fisher Tiger, and even though some people still play it, is that it limits your hand to 5, which in the current meta is not ideal. If you're still playing an OP14, I do kind of get it, because your aggressive playstyle kind of like wrecks people, except for, I think, Boa or Moria or something, because you have to know your matchups. So that's kind of like something that I think maybe I'll try to reiterate like throughout the video is that Jinbe is as good as the pilot who's playing it, where you need to have like superior matchup knowledge, even though like you know the basics of like how to play this deck. If you don't know which cards to get rid of or which cards you have to watch out for, it's kind of like a lose-lose for Jinbe. So matchup knowledge is really, really important for this deck, and hand management as well, because you don't want to trash like eventual counters in the late game. You might as well just trash like your bricks in your hand. But other than that, like you play like early on when you don't have like the eventual cards that we will show, Fisher Tiger was very good because you get to refill your hand anyway. And then you also have like especially on your 8 Dawn turn, you can play a second Fisher Tiger, play Chu or Arlong just to find your Jinbeis, and then you attack for, I don't know, 9, and then big with your other characters, you know. And then you have a bunch of Fisher Tigers that's sitting on the board, and they're kind of hard to attack into. Kind of. But at some point during the OP14 cycle, I think it was when EBO3 started coming out. Maybe getting close to EBO3. The bounce tempo package started to appear. And technically, these were cards that you could play along with your Fishman package if you had it. But if you were focusing more on like bouncing and tempo, you had like maybe 4 or 5 cards that you can focus on. Pre-rotation, it was definitely Gum Gum Red Rock. 6 costs, main event, plays up to 1 character at the bottom of the owner's deck. Removes anything and everything pre-rotation. Like, it's your best removal piece. Except for Imu. Imu was a bit of a contentious one. And I just realized that there was actually another card here that I forgot to put, but that was a tech card that I think we won't be able to discuss at this point because it's not in the pick. I'm not gonna change the PowerPoint for this. So because this was a block 1 card, it was able to it got rotated out once OP15 came, and it was kind of a shame because this was like one of the best removal cards for Jinbe. But if you plan on playing Jinbe on the extra format, definitely play this card. This is a good removal. It's a good removal piece. Another good removal piece, and something that I personally actually play still, maybe as a 2-of, is Gravity Blade Raging Tiger from OP6. 7 costs main, plays up to 2 characters with a cost of 6 or less at the bottom of the owner's deck in any order, and trigger, you bounce 1 5 cost. With the abundance of Borsalinos or green cards, whatever, and anything that costs 6 or less, this is your premier removal piece. I mean, not piece, event. Like, the reason why I say 2-off because it's a brick, but if you have the opportunity to play it, you should, because that's a 2-card tempos. Okay, for 1 card you remove 2 things, and it changes the game in a way where it helps you kind of be more aggressive in a way. However, there are certain matchups where Gravity Blade is useless. Imu is one of them. I would say Ace is another one. So when you can, if you know that you don't need it, just discard it to your leader's effect. It's still fodder. Like, it's still really, really good. But I would not play 4 copies of Gravity Blade. That's you're gonna shoot yourself in the foot. One card that has like as soon as this was added in the deck, it has stayed ever since, is the 4-cost starter 17 law, where on play, you may return one of your characters to the owner's hand. And if your leader has the 7 Warlords of the Sea type, return up to one character with a cost of 4 or less to the owner's hand. So it removes Marco from Ace, it removes basically any 4 cost that might be problematic for you. And what's good about this is that you can actually bounce one of your early drops, like for example your Arlong Searcher, so that you can retry eventually, or a Chew to discard or anything like that. It cannot be targeted by your leader's effect, but it doesn't matter. It's still a 5k swing. It's still pressure, which is very good. Same thing for this Jozu. It's a 6-cost 7,000 power Whitebeard Pirates with a 1k counter. Same thing as what Law does, but it has no leader restriction and it can bounce a 6 or less, which is, I think, more relevant to what the meta is right now. Except of course for Enel, you can't really remove anything with, you can't remove like the big bodies for Enel, but it's still pressure. You have a 5 and a 7 that pressures. It's still pretty good. This one was something that popped up, and I think I playtested with this card specifically. So it's Kaya from OP3, which was reprinted, so she has block 4 types, so you can still play it. 1 cost 0 power, like East Blue character with 2k counter, and on play draw 2, trash 2. You mainly use it for the counter because you can't really search it with Arlong, but it can be bounced by Jozu or Law after you've filtered your hand. You've played it to filter your hand, redraw 2 and discard 2 to defend yourself a little more. But that's, I don't play it anymore. I tried when I was still playing like Bounce, and it's still pretty good. I mean, at the time it was pretty good, but I didn't feel that it was strong enough to do what it needed to do, for sure. And now we actually get to talk about the elephant in the room. No, just kidding. This was something that was quite important, I think, for Jinbe's game plan before OP15 or EBO3 or something like that. It's Pudding. 4 cost 4,000 power, the 1k counter, and on play, your opponent returns all cards in their hand to their deck and shuffles the deck, and then your opponent draws 5 cards. This was the premier tempo card for Jinbe, especially when you play cards like Jozu or Law or something like Red Rock. This was mainly played for Ace and Imu, where they keep a lot of cards in their hand, but then, or basically anyone who's just like stockpiling cards in their hand, basically any blue player ever, and you get to nuke it for 4. Because of the nature of the card, where it is a blue card that is anti-blue, and not all colors have it, I think that was the main reason that was banned. I know I did a piece on Pudding in my ban list video, but I didn't like. Granted, it sucks, I think, to not have that part anymore, but I mean this specific like tool, because it lets a lot of cards who want to stack up like run rampant. Any yellow deck, I can name a few: Kalgara, Blue Yellow Nami, who just want to stockpile so many cards. You have no way to attack their hand anymore. You've lost like a way to pressure them faster, or something to pressure them in the late game so that they don't have a lot of defense. But that is the nature of it. I'm not gonna say any more of my piece. I kind of figured that I think that the Pudding ban was not too terrible for us, although it does suck that we don't have it anymore. But it's fine, because the next package, which is what most people would be playing nowadays when they play Jinbe, got a resurgence. The 7 Warlords package that was supposed to be used by Doflamingo and can now be used by Doflamingo on the extra battle, but you can use it right now. For Jinbe was because of the unban of one specific card, the namesake. 4 cost 5,000 power. On play, play up to 1 7 Warlords of the C-type character, the cost of 4 or less other than Jinbe from your hand. Remember Law? Yeah, you can definitely play Jinbe into Law now. So before, when you're playing the bounce package, you only get to play Law and bounce something. Now you get to put 2 bodies out, and not to mention, it's a Fishman target. You can now attack for 7 with a Jinbe. So the pudding ban does suck, but you have another layer of aggressive pressure, which the deck kinda needed. But because of the Jinbe unban, the whole deck pivoted now to a Warlords package, where certain cards basically got replaced. For example, the Hachan got replaced by a Sengoku, where it's like Arlong, where you get to search for any 7 Warlord character from the top 5. Buggy is a 1 cost 2k counter that lets you look at the top 3 of your deck and puts them back on top of any order. So you can play Buggy into Sengoku, but I don't play Buggy specifically. Most people do, and I think it's working well for them. It's just that I don't play it personally. I could try it though, so that I play Buggy into Sengoku and then I bounce Buggy to hand. I mean, we'll talk more about like how the gameplay works later, and also I might link. I mean, you guys get to see my other videos of me playing Jinbe, so that's gameplay tutorial for you as well. But the most significant thing that came out of the fact that we focus more on the Warlords package is Boa. And not just because Boa was a Warlord that, you know, that kind of ties everything together, it's because of the necessity of Enel. So Boa is a 6 cost 8,000 power on play. Up to 1 of your opponent's characters other than Monkey D. Luffy cannot attack until the end of your opponent's next turn. Then place up to 1 character with a cost of 1 or less at the bottom of the owner's deck. This was a tech find. As soon as people started playing Boa, this became the one reason why we could probably fight Enel, although based on my experiences, like Enel is still pretty hard to play. But Boa does mitigate that. And it's very good against other decks as well, because you're freezing a character that is not Luffy. And not a lot of people play Luffy cards, I think, except for yellow. But then by then, a 5 cost Luffy that has rush can be dealt with the gravity blade, so it doesn't really matter. But you got a mid to late game pressure with this card. Very important. This became one of the most important cards that arose from the necessity of the meta shift. And then we have Edward Weevil, 4 cost 6,000 power brick, on play draw a card. You can play this with Jinbe. It replaces itself, but I've playtested this deck. I mean, not this deck, but this specific card, and I don't like it. Other people might like it because it's also added pressure. It's 4 cost 6,000 power, which helps with Ace. But personally, I don't like it. It's not really... It gives me like, okay, you get more targets specifically, but I never really liked it in a way that if you draw it into your hand, or if you get it in life, you don't really have defense. you're kind of like stuck, and that's like from a gameplay perspective, I didn't really like that. So I don't play it in my deck. Some people do, and I respect them for it to like on trying to find a way around the Weevil. Maybe in conjunction with the Buggy where they actually play both of them. That's also fine. But I wouldn't play Weevil. I mean, not at this point. And then there are 4-cost like tech cards. I mean, to be fair, this was a carryover from the Doflamingo like leader from OP1. Like these are nearly the same cards that they would play. But now the Jinbe is unbanned, so you actually get to play it in the deck. And Crocodile is one of them. He's also a 2k counter. He's 4-cost 5,000 power, and on play you may rest a Dawn card to return up to one character with a cost of 2 or less to the owner's hand. This is an Enel matchup. This can remove Leo as well. And it's pressure as well. It's like a second law that you need. Especially against, like, this is specifically for Enel. Like, Enel is so annoying. Enel has been so prevalent in the meta since he came, and this is not an Enel rant. This is a Jinbe. This is a Jinbe video, so I'm not gonna do anything about it. But if people were to ask me how I feel about Enel, I could make a video about it. You just have to comment below or something. Anyway, we'll just move on. Trafalgar Law is also a 2k counter 4-cost, but he's only 4,000 power. Very annoying. I tried testing him. He's not really the best because activate main. You may return this character to the owner's hand. If your opponent has 6 or more cards in their hand, your opponent places 1 card from their hand at the bottom of the deck. This is a 2k counter mostly, and if you don't have another target, you might as well play it with Jinbe, and then you bounce it to hand to make your opponent discard a card. But most of the time, your opponents will only have like 5 cards in hand because you're being aggressive with them so much. It doesn't really matter. I think this only matters against Nami. But then again, Nami's already annoying to deal with, as I'll explain later. And then I see some people play Boa Hancock, the blocker, 4-cost 6,000 power. On play, you can look at 3 cards from the top of your deck and then place them at the top or bottom in any order. Then give up to 1 rested Dawn card to one of your 7 Warlords leader or character cards. Only applies to your leader when she comes in. She's a blocker, yeah, but she's still a brick. It's the same thing as how I feel with Weevil. Like, you draw her in life, or you don't have the combo with Jinbe, it just feels bad. So I don't necessarily play it. I had to pause there for a second. Because we have to talk about this one. As much as I want to play this card, there's one glaring issue with this, and I'll read it for you. So, 4-cost 5,000 power with a 1k counter. He's a Warlord, he's a Fishman. And on play, look at 5 cards from the top of your deck, reveal up to 1 7 Warlords of the Sea type card other than Jinbe, and add it to your hand. Then place the rest at the bottom of your deck in any order. And when attacking, place up to 1 character with a cost of 1 or less at the bottom of the owner's deck. Non-Jinbe, 7 Warlord. Can't search itself. So this was a card design as kind of like anti-Jinbe propaganda, I'm assuming, for the 7 Warlords. But this was I think this was made after sometime I think after the Jinbe ban. Remember, like, this is a PRB2 card. This was created after the ban lists and before the unbanning of Jinbe. Granted, this is an Enel matchup card, because you get to look for Boa and something like that. But the fact that you can't search Jinbe at all, like your boss monster, you can't search him. And I've tried playing with this card. It is very difficult to play. Like, if you whiff, you whiff, and that's the tricky part about it. I would advise against playing this card, but if you want to try, play at your own risk. Because I personally played this over the board and in the simulator, and it's not as effective as what you think it should be. But I wanted to bring this up because I think people would want to talk about it. So, well, it's in the guide, at least. So, now we get to talk about the strategies, or how the deck works, and the matchups. And I based the matchup on, at the time of this recording, like maybe most, if not all, of like the top 10 most played decks in the simulator according to the OPTCG power rankings or something like that. So we're gonna go specifically for a turn-by-turn play. Ideally, for most, if not all matchups, you want to go second. And the gameplay is as follows, especially when you try to keep like a hand. Keep a hand with, depending on the deck list that you're trying to play, because there's 3 packages that have existed for Jinbe. But ideally, you want to keep an Arlong and a Chu, or a Sengoku if you're playing the Warlords package, and have at least a Law or a Jinbe, or ideally both, in your opening hand at least. And then you get to look for boas, you get to look for other things, and then you play Arlong. 2/1 costs ideally, and then Jinbe into Law on your 4 Dawn turn. Simple enough. If you're playing, if you're still playing, I would say the Fishman package in some capacity, you can go like turn 1 Arlong, like if you manage to find Aladdin or a Wadatsumi. If we go back to this one. So ideally, if you're playing the Fishman package at least, you have to keep like 2/1 costs and a combination of like Aladdin or Shirahoshi into one of the 3 drops and Fisher Tiger, and then you kind of like get to do it the same way as the 7 Warlords package, where you play into something. So ideally, you want to be playing 2 characters on turn 2. So turn 2 on the 4 Dawn turn. So you want to be playing 2 characters every turn. That's your ideal situation. More often than not, you would be playing 2 characters on your 4 Dawn turn than in your 2 Dawn turn, but that's also fine. If you're going first, same thing, but you only get to play one cost, maybe two costs, or 1 2 costs, and you attack 7k on your leader, and then you play the combo where you play Jinbe into Law, you bounce one of your 1 drops, and then you play the 1 drop because you have an extra Dawn, if you're playing first, of course. So that's a 1 and a 3. And then between 6 and 10 Dawn, this is where the matchup knowledge becomes super important, because turn by turn, like for the first 2 turns, it's pretty easy what you're trying to do. You either draw or you search, and then you play 2 characters. But I think this is where the most technical thing about Jinbe is. Between 6 Dawn and 10 Dawn, depends on the matchup. Some matchups you want to be playing Boa to freeze an attack and bottom a 1 cost. Or you can play a Jozu to bounce a 5 or a 6. Technically it's a 5, because it's your 6 Dawn turn and they've only played something for 5. On your 8 Dawn turn, you can do the same thing between Jozu and Boa, and then you can play your 1 drops. Or if you don't have it, maybe you can play your 4 costs, or you can play, like, if you have a Gravity Blade in your hand and you've already bounced something with Jozu, you can play that 1 drop and then play Gravity Blade. So there's a lot of technical play by the time you reach 6 Dawn or 7 Dawn, it really depends. But if we're gonna focus on like playing second, this is the most technical. Like by 6th Dawn, that's when the technicalities and the minute details kind of like come up. One thing to note is that you do not play Jinbe on 8. Don't play Jinbe on your 8th Dawn turn. Always keep it for 10 because the value is there. You get to rest 2 Dawn cards, so at 10 Dawn you played for 8 and then you rest 2 Dawn cards to draw 2 cards and return a 7 cost, ideally a blocker, or something that's annoying on your opponent's board, and then swing face. You have to be aggressive here, especially on your 4 Dawn turn. You play Jinbe into Law, you bounce like for example a Chu or an Arlong, you discard a card, you attack with your 1 cost and your leader, and you just have to kind of like discard cards that you don't need in that specific moment, and then just be aggressive just to pressure the hand. If you need to kind of like go after the board, you could, but ideally just try to kill them before they stabilize. So there's a lot of technicality for sure. But the thing is, what's really impressive about Jinbe, and this is me after having played with him since February, of course, maybe January, February, I don't really remember when OP14 came out anymore, but your characters are already board removal, so you don't necessarily have to attack into board anymore unless absolutely necessary. You just have to go at life. Pressure your opponent's hand, do not let them rebuild, for sure. In most cases, like if you bounce a 4 drop into their hand with Law for example, and then you attack with 2 5s, more often than not they will be forced to discard the card that you just bounced, which is very, very good. But important thing to note, by 6th Dawn, this is where the technicalities start to come alive, and hold Jinbe until at least your 10 Dawn turn. That's the most important thing. Also, if you can, if they put a bunch of blockers but they're at 0 life, just play Femur and just kill them. By that point, if you've done it well enough, you actually can see that they only have like 4 or 5 cards in their hand. If you attack for 24 with this leader, or 22, you should be fine. Especially if they're at 0 life. So, I think we will discuss the matchups right about now. Yeah. Purple Enel. I'm not sure of like what the best package is. I put Warlords because that's the one I'm playing right now. But for Enel, you go first. Do not let them go. Do not let them go first, because they get to be aggressive towards you. If you go first, you can nuke their hand. Like you can like start like messing up with their hand like pretty early on. And they are delayed for Enel for a turn. They are delayed for attacks in turn, so you don't really have to worry as much. The best matchup card for this one specifically is the Boa Hancock, that freezes an attack and bottoms a 1 cost, because they're just playing a bunch of 1 costs and 20 events or something like that. Doesn't really matter. Boa is your best friend here. Clean up small characters for sure. Try to attack into the weenies and then attack big into his life. Once he starts dropping those Enels, try to always use Boa to freeze it and then chip away at his hand. I'm not sure if you should chip away at his board, but either way, they won't really have much of a chance. I would say that Enel is a matchup that you should have like a lot of practice for, because more often than not, they will just choose to go first, and even though second is your ideal curve, they will just smack you to death because they went first, and you don't want that. Clean his hand as much as possible because you're being aggressive, and keep track of which events they already used. I'm talking specifically about Mamaragan, and I think it was the lightning. That one cost that basically freezes a 5 or 6,000 power, and they cannot untap because they're free to like manipulate their Dawn as much as they want. But you can spring a surprise or two with Jinbe if they're not careful. If they're forced to kind of like discard with their Mamaragans and things like that, yeah, sure. Another thing I think you should also look out for is the Divine Departure that gives minus 8,000, I think. And it's a 3k counter. I lost to Enel like because of that calculation. And yeah, so just like be mindful of like the Boa Hancock specifically, because they will be kind of like your most important card eventually. Blue Yellow Nami, and I accidentally clicked into that beforehand, but I wasn't done talking. I have no idea how to play against this deck. I've played first, I've played second, and with different deck lists as well, it is not easy to play. It doesn't matter if you're going first or second, you can still play second if you want to delay their new gate for a turn. But it doesn't matter if you have curve. The fact that they're going first, they can attack for 8 into Nami, into Nico Robin, and if they're playing the Gecko Moria package, that's also annoying. I was going to say that Gravity Blade is your best friend here because you get to bottom the Namis and the Borsalinos. But by then they already have like 7 costs, 8,000 power Robins. They already have the new gates. They already have Morias. Their life gain is just all over the place. The fact that they can just trash a card to make sure they go to 7 for the rest of the turn. Nami became the one deck that stopped Jinbe from ever existing from this format. Because I think a lot of people are just going to be playing Nami because it's the best deck. It's the best deck right now alongside Enel. These two decks basically gate kept everything. Okay, I'm saying that with air quotes. Gate kept everything else. But Blue Yellow Nami specifically fucked Jinbe. And also Edward Newgate's a bitch because no matter how many Perfume Femurs you actually have, they're just gonna heal life with Borsalino and you can't really do anything about it. I wasn't gonna go into the Blue Yellow Nami rant. I'm sorry, but if you have like an idea on how to beat this deck, please comment because I don't know how. Yeah. And moving on to like a little bit of good news, I guess. Green Mihawk. I don't think it matters on which package to use. You go second because even though first is their ideal curve, the fact that you're also on curve being second and they don't have a lot of counters in their hand. I guess the events because they're untapping, but then they're using a lot of events, but they don't have a lot of 2k or 1k counters. This is one of your better matchups in the meta. Although I would have to warn you guys about Electrical Luna that freezes your board, or Peronas that freezes 2 of your 5 drops or less, or the Luffy event that freezes a 7 or less. I think green in general is just annoying, but with the loss, I didn't note this in the PowerPoint, but with the loss of 8 cost Kid, the matchup just swung back in our favor as long as you know how to fight against it. You just have to be careful with Law and Beppo, especially after you've played Jinbe, because they're gonna freeze one of your Jinbes for sure, and that's one less attack. But I guess it doesn't matter. I think with the Law and Beppo, just have like a second Jinbe at least in your hand, or a third one. And this is why I think in most if not all of the matchups, I don't recommend playing Fisher Tiger anymore, because the fact that you're so limited in your hand, you're just gonna get screwed over. Another, I think if you know how to play Jinbe really well, I think Red Blue Lucy is, in a meta relevant sense, this is your best matchup. You go second, it doesn't really matter, because I think they can play a 3 cost into Cavendish, but if you're going second, you just have the removal package for sure. Even with the pudding ban, it's still fine, because even though you can't really nuke their hand, the fact that you're so aggressive, you just have to poke and poke and poke and poke, and the only thing they're either discarding are 2Ks and 1Ks, or they're discarding the events that they need. Which is very, very annoying for them, because they need events to kind of like their deck churn. If you can remove Leo by either attacking it or using 6-cost Boa, do it. Do not let Cavendish attack at once. Bounce it to hand or freeze the attack, I don't really mind. The blocker Sabo, the 7-cost blocker Sabo, even if they've already used like one of their events, bounce it to hand when you can. You have to do it. You have to make sure that they don't have enough blockers to kind of like stall you, or even then, if they only have events and they've already used their 2Ks in 1Ks, I think that's also pretty good, because for example, you have a bunch of Jinbeis already on the board and they have a bunch of Sabos, but they're at 0 life. You femur them to death. Red Blue Lucy is a deck that wants to stall and has the blockers and has like blocker Sabos as a 9k attack as well. It doesn't matter, I think. Especially if you play really well and if you're quite careful with not trying to over defend, this will be a very easy matchup for you. Speaking of ace, Red Blue Ace. I've been testing this a bit more, like I've been playing with a lot, like some like ace mains in my locals specifically. Go first. This is a hot take. Go first. Go first against ace. Even though going second is probably like because they want to go second. Go first, because going second is a death sentence, especially now that they have Red Zoro that has Character Rush. Not to mention, if they go first, they will be attacking for 7,000 every single turn. Do not give them that chance, because you don't have enough defenses for a 7k attack. Even with the pudding ban, it doesn't really matter. Best matchup card here, especially if you're going first, is Law or Boa, because you're bottoming their 1-cost searchers, you're bouncing Marco with the 4-cost, you're more aggressive early, because then you get to go 8k, 6k, 8k, 6k, clean out their hand as much as possible. The fact that Boa's already in 8k is very good for you. Force the leader effect every turn and make them trash cards that they don't want to trash. But make sure that you have enough life to survive Roger or Newgate or whatever it is, because if they're at 0 life and they don't have much cards in hand, you can easily femur them to death. So going first, I think, is something that I had discovered the more that I played against ace, and the more that I thought of it, it's just like, oh, I have to be very aggressive against ace. So yeah. Red Green Luffy, on the other hand, is a second. This is like a lot of these, maybe not a lot of them, but like some of them that I find are just like, even though it's their curve, play into their curve, because you have something going on for you. Best matchup card here is definitely the removal cards, Boa, Jinbe, or anything. The leader effect is annoying but not impossible, where they're always untapping with 5 Dawn, and they're also playing green, so they're playing Luna or the Luffy event. But it's okay, because you can either freeze the Sanji, you cannot freeze Luffy, but you can gravity blade it. You can bounce the Usopp, like if just try to stall their board as much as possible where they're not attacking you. And then try to count how much Dawn they need to invest. So, for example, they have 2 Dawn open. Swing big first, for example, like 5, right? You kind of like swing like 9k or swing 7 into them so that they're forced to use the 2 Dawn or 1 Dawn and a card. And then that way you're nuking their hand, and as well as you're kind of like removing their Dawn for future swings. So that's what you kind of have to do. Swing as big as possible without sacrificing your hand or things like that. But other than that, red green Luffy should be fine. Black Imu. The only thing I can say about Black Imu is that this is a known thing against Black Imu, is to always go second against them no matter which deck you're playing. Because if they went second, they just win. You have to get them to 0 life before they can even get to 10 Dawn. Just have to aggro them out. You cannot let them get to 10 Dawn with 2 or 1 life. You will never survive that. Just nuke their hand as much as possible. Once they put like 2 blockers or something like that, just femur them if you can. That's the only advice I can give you, because like Black Imu is such a is like the deck has not changed after OP14, and so the play patterns are the same. So the only thing you need to do is just like try to get to femur them, especially if they're at 0 life, and even if they're like holding like 1 or 2 Dawn for like their +4 counters. The max that they can do like in any given point, they could probably do like 15 or 17. But I know I'm speaking a bit gibberish here, but like Black Imu is such a known matchup at this point, where just go second against them, clean out their hand as much as you can, even though you're gonna be like, oh, because I'm discarding, I get to choose what I want and everything like that. But that's the nature of it. Just be aggressive against Imu. That's all. And I kind of wanted to add like this final section as basically matchups that I personally have tested and I would advise for you guys to avoid besides Blue Yellow Nami. And I put the dash here instead of here, but we're gonna ignore that. Kobe, Sabo, Teach, Kalgara. There's probably more, but these are the 4 ones that came into mind. Kobe is annoying because whatever thing you put, especially if you go second or first, it doesn't really matter if you play against Kobe. It's just try to put something, and basically what they'll do is that, oh, we just get to attack characters that the turn that they're playing, and we can attack active characters as well. They just attack into your board and it's not protected, which means that by the time you're trying to establish something, they have already cleared your board. And the fact that their leader protects their characters by just bottoming 3 cards from trash. The fact that you're kind of like a tempo removal deck as well, you're not really going anywhere as Jinbe against Kobe. This is like a losing matchup either way. Same thing with Sabo, where I don't know, because like if you went second, it doesn't really matter what they do, because by the time they get to 6 Dawn, they will always be like 5 or 6k or 7k every single turn, and they have blockers. And especially if they went second, like second is like their best curve, so try to go second against them. But I don't know, it's kind of like, for me, Sabo is kind of like hard to play against. And Teach is another one, because your on-play effects are negated every time they trash a card. They can be trashing as early as turn 1. They can be trashing as early as like 1 dawn or 2 dawn. It doesn't really matter if they went first or second. They will stop you from even playing a card. They will stop your Jinbe effects. They will stop your boas. They will stop your, like, their 10 cost Teach blocker will stop your Jinbe from ever attacking, and then they will just swing in and you die. Because you just get hit for 12 every single time and you can't really do anything about it. I have won against Teach once, just because like they were so aggressively discarding. But by then, like, I just had like a big enough board to kind of like get through, and I was able to win. But other than that, if you're a good Teach player, you don't really care. You just negate Jinbei's whole deck. That's what you do. And Kalgara, finally, this was something that I played against a friend of mine, Vantis. Gonna shout him out over here. The wiper that came out in OP15 was a game changer for them. Because they can remove, like, what? They can do minus 2k on the characters when they come in, and you get to attach it onto Kalgara, which means you're attacking for 6. Getting a life, like taking a life, playing another character, and then you play Borsalino. It's yellow shenanigans. I'm just not gonna get into that. But yeah, guys, that's the Blue Jinbe guide. I don't know if you guys would like to see more of a follow-up or more of a detailed guide to this. Personally, I think the best way to kind of learn is to just see like what decklist you want to go for, what kind of package you want to go for, and then play testing, like playing through the turns, knowing specifically which decks, like which leaders have important cards that they want to go for, and then targeting that. So the final thing I can say, I'm just going to reiterate what I said before, like this deck is very matchup dependent. This is skill intensive, but once you know how the deck works, this is a very rewarding deck. So don't be discouraged if you're losing with this deck. This does take time. It took me like a week or like 2 weeks before I was able to like understand the deck, and I was able to win with it. But yeah, it's really just like repetition. There are certain matchups to avoid in this jungle meta, but other than that, just practice Jinbe, that's for sure. And if you guys want, you can check out the other videos in my channel regarding Jinbe gameplay, and there you get to see my thoughts on how the game, on how the deck works, you know, real time and everything. Yeah, thank you guys for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this guide. And yep, stay frosty, guys.